Now, let's talk about if you do not have any NHS experience. If you keep applying for NHS jobs without getting shortlisted for interviews, then your application might be missing one or two things. To find out what that could be, then I would advise you keep watching this video because you might learn a thing or two about NHS applications. It's very important that you read thoroughly the job vacancy and advert before you apply. And when you're reading, you want to look out for the job description, the person specification, including the desirable and the essential criteria. After you must have read the job and the job description and you think you're a good fit for the job, because it's not just about applying for just any job. Regardless of how good your application is, if you're not qualified, and by qualification, I mean meeting essential criteria. So let's say this is a biomedical scientist role that you're trying to apply for. If you're not HCPC registered, which is one of the essential criteria for applying for biomedical scientist jobs, or if you do not have a biomedical science degree, it's more likely than not that you're not going to get shortlisted for an interview, except it's like a trainee position that that states clearly that if you do not have your registration, we could give you a trainee annex, kind of thing. But if that's not the case, there's no point applying for a job that you know fully well that you're not qualified for. You don't have the requirements for the job. When you want to apply for NHS jobs, it usually takes you to track jobs. So obviously you need to create your account, sign in, or create a login details with your email and stuff like that. So when you click apply for the job, usually if you have a setup track jobs account, you can choose to start the application with your most recent application. So basically it just copies all your details, your name, your personal details, your academic details, your professional details into the next application. And this could be a source of mistake for a lot of people. I said it could be a source of mistake to a lot of people because in biomedical science, for instance, we have a couple of departments in biomedical science. We have hematology, we have biochemistry, we have histopathology. Let's say the job you applied for previously was a biochemistry role and you are copying a biochemistry job application to a hematology job application. That might not be good because you might be missing some essential parts of this new job. So even if I would obviously advise that you copy in terms of your personal details, your name, your date of birth, those things don't change. When you get to the point where you start filling your CV, your online CV, and then your training and qualifications, you might want to edit it. I'm going to be looking at my laptop, which is just placed here in case you see me looking downwards. I'm just looking at my laptop. So after you've copied your personal details and then your education, which is your qualification, which is most likely the same thing, the next point you see is your training courses. So if you've done any training or CPD which could be valid for that particular role, this is the time for you to put it. And like I said, it could be different. You might have done a training qualification or a CPD that's relevant for a hematology role that was not relevant for a biochemistry role. So you did not put it in your biochemistry application, but now you put it in your chemistry application. So as you move further with your application, the next part you're going to see is where they ask you for your qualification or registration. So this is where, if it's a biomedical scientist job you're applying for, you're going to be talking about your HCPC registration. That also is constant. Your registration number is also constant, like in all your applications. So that doesn't change as well. So this is the part that I say that is very important, which is your job experience, your employer activity. So it's like an online CV with the NHS where you basically put your employer, the job you did, the roles and responsibilities. So this is the part where you do not just copy blindly. What I would advise that you can do is that look at the job description of the job you're applying for. Most likely you have done these things, you have the experience with these things. So when you are feeling that part that is talking about your employer activity, what you should try to be aiming to put is basically what the job description says. So if the job description is talking about someone who has worked with a specific analyzer, for instance, let's say Abbott, you can put in that job in your CV, like your employer activities, how you're proficient with in your current job. You work with this analyzer. You can put as much hospitals that you've worked in, school experience, lab, whatever lab experience you have. Just try to put in key phrases and looking at, it's very important you read the job advert. It's going to say like what the job description is, and make sure you like try to put them in your online CV as how you, and show how you already are doing this thing that this job description is saying. When you filled all these parts, this comes like the bulk of the application, where is the part that talks about writing a 1 5 word supporting information, why you're good for the job and stuff like that. Like I've said, it's very important to pay attention to the person's specification. So the person's specification is going to talk about things that they need. There's going to be the essential criteria, there's going to be the desirable criteria. So you ensure that when you're making the supporting statement, it must fit into what they're looking for. They're not going to make assumptions. So if you do not say what they need, then you're not going to get short. It's kind of like, I'm looking for somebody that has that place, like that acts as a team. You have to put in your application that you act as a team. It's very important that you do not have just one supporting information or supporting statement for all the jobs you're applying for. This is a very huge mistake, because there's no generic job advert. Each job advert is different. Each job advert, even if they all need basic requirements, the person specification, they might be similar, but they're not exactly the same. So do not have just one supporting information that you believe that this is what I'm going to use to apply for all the jobs I'm applying for. No, you have to switch each application. The timing of when you apply for the job is also important. I am of the opinion, it's not proven, but I'm of the opinion that if you apply early, like when a job advert comes out, if you apply like immediately, you stand a very high chance of getting an interview. That's what I believe. I may be wrong or I may be right. I do not know. But it's good for you to look for jobs that are just, so when you go to search for NHS jobs, there's a part where you can filter according to the date it was posted. So what you can do is try to aim for jobs that were just recently posted. What also this helps you to do is, because sometimes when they've received sufficient application, the job might actually close before the set time was actually supposed to close. Like if it was meant to close like in 2 weeks and they feel like they've received subsequent application, they might actually close it before time. Another thing I believe that people kind of overlook is trust values. So when you're stating in your supporting statement, also talk about how you have the trust values. Try to look for the values of the trust, the specific trust, and talk about how you have the values that the trust go with and how it resonates with you. Obviously, when you're making these statements, make them in a way that feels natural. Don't just like say it that looks like, oh, you're just saying it. Try to make it feel natural. If you're applying for a biomedical scientist job, there are key things that you should ensure you try to put in your application. SOP should most likely be in an application, because most jobs talk about SOP, talk about quality, IQC, EQA. These words are like very strong words that you need to put in your application. Training and competency, COSH, health and safety, non-conformance, teamwork, limbs. So these are keywords that are very, very important when you're applying for an NHS job. Even when you're going for an interview, expect to see at least, if not everything, almost going to be looking a lot down at my laptop, because we're going to be using, and I'm going to be reading out a job application that has landed somebody an interview in the past, and we're just going to use that as an analysis to guide you in your application. The job application, apart from the intro to the job application, it states that candidates will need to be enthusiastic, well motivated, and innovative, good communication skills, and they also included trust values. This is a hematology role job advert. In the advert, they also talked about the equipment that the analyzers that the lab uses. So they said Sysmex, gene experts, and CBR capillary analyzers. The person specification states essential criteria states hold HCPC state registration, BSc in biomedical science or equivalent, and then for desirable criteria, they want a membership of profession bodies such as IBMS, and then for other essential criteria in terms of experience, they're asking for CPD, experience with pathology IT systems, experience with quality management system. For desirable, they're asking for experience of working in NHS, hematology and blood transfusion, experience of following SOP, experience of using pathology information such as WinPath. In terms of knowledge, for essential criteria, they're looking at good organization skills, good communication skills, ability to work under pressure, attention to detail, team player. And then for desirable criteria, they're looking for health and safety legislation and COSH. And if you can see, those things that I stated initially that you need to have, that are very important, most of them actually appear in this job description. And I just said it out of my head because I've seen a lot of job adverts and I know what they usually entail. So let's look at the person's supporting information. Person starts as an HCPC registered biomedical scientist, currently working in so and so. I believe my skills, experience, and professional values align with the person's specification. The person also went ahead to talk about their bachelor's degree in biomedical science and their experience, NHS experience in hematology and blood transfusion. Obviously, I won't be able to read the whole job, the whole supporting info, but I'm just looking for good key details in this job description, in this job supporting information that you can, use as a guide. The person goes further to say, I currently work on 6mex hematology analyzer. That's the analyzer that was stated in the job description. I currently work on 6mex hematology analyzer, coagulation systems, and orthovision blood transfusion analyzers, which are similar to use at this hospital. My work requires a strong sense of organization and precision. I perform routine and specialist hematological investigation, ensuring results are accurate and clinically relevant. Each day, I manage a high workload of urgent and routine samples, including full blood counts, coagulation profile, and transfusion compatibility testing. I understand the importance of quality control and regularly review internal and external quality data, ensuring that results meet strict performance before authorization. I am familiar with Q polls for document control and incident reporting, as well as WinPath and Sunquest laboratory information management systems. So you can see in the application that this candidate has tried to make sentences to prove that they have the person specification and the job description. That is like the most important thing, the person specification. When you're applying for a job, whatever they say they want, use those words. So if they say we want someone who has experience with quality assurance, use those exact word. I have experience with quality assurance, and then you can explain what experience you have. So now that we know the basic skill required to apply for NHS jobs, it's important to state that not every application that you put through is going to be successful. Most likely than not, your first application is not going to be successful. So do not think that because you might do everything right, but you just did not make it to the interview stage, because a lot of people, apply for these jobs and, sometimes you just don't get shortlisted. That being said, what you need to do is state, keep applying, try to apply for multiple jobs. Like as they're coming out, try to apply and just keep applying. If you're doing everything right, like saying, using the job description and the person specification to apply, and you have the right qualification and registration, you are most likely than not eventually going to land yourself an interview. Now, let's talk about if you do not have any NHS experience, because most of these jobs they would say previous NHS experience. But let's say you do not have NHS experience, but you have, good lab experience. What I used to do at the time before I had any form of NHS experience, I would write NHS type labs in my personal statement. I would say I've worked in hematology lab in a busy pathology NHS type lab. Because if you've worked in any of the hospitals, especially like back home, it's similar to the NHS. So even if it's not NHS, I just say NHS type labs. And I feel like that's what eventually helped me to land, my very first interview. In terms of CPD, you can mention any courses training, certification, audits, leadership roles that you've been able to accomplish. You can include that in your application. Try to state why you're applying for the job for that particular trust, and just say one or two things you know about the trust, and say, oh, I really love to work in this trust or in this hospital because of this. This is the time where you can also talk about the values of the trust. I believe that if you put all this in place and put all this in perspective, you stand a chance of eventually landing yourself a job interview, which is the first stage to actually like landing your dream job. Thank you so much for watching. If you have questions, again, I'll be in the comments, and I'll see you guys in my next video.